So back in 2018, when my son was in 8th grade, he came home from school one day and he said, "Mom, the earth is burning and there's nothing we can do about it." And this was like, it broke my heart. I saw the fear in his eyes and I was like, we gotta do something. And I remembered a friend of mine from New York who talked about composting all the time, and I blew her off. And this time I thought, we should talk to her and see really what she's got to say. And she told us a lot. She told us about landfills. She said landfills are the 3rd largest source of methane and greenhouse gases in the United States. Often we talk about cars and industry, but we can do something about the way we throw waste away. And so we found out that when you take an apple core, for example, and you throw it in a landfill, it gets trapped by plastics and debris, and that is what leads to anaerobic decomposition, and that's what makes methane. But if you take all that food out of a landfill and you just let it decompose naturally the way nature intended, within 3 to 6 months it turns back into soil. And that soil is nutrient rich and it grows more food. And not only that, when you have food waste, 100% of it can turn back into compost, but like our municipality, they spend a lot of money on recycling and weekly pickup, but only about 5 to 9% of that actually turns into a new recycled product. So we were like, okay, this is perfect, we really want to do this. So we called up our local compost crew, they're a little hauling company near us, and we said, okay, how do we do this? And they said, well, we'll teach you how, but we're having a special, and if you can get 50 of your neighbors to start composting too, we'll cut the price in half for everybody. So we're like, this is perfect. We started writing notes on the listserv, and within a couple weeks, we got 100 people in the neighborhood to start composting. So this is great. We went to the local middle school, and we said to the PTA, did you know that if you just put aside $2,000 for a year of compost removal for your school, then you can remove about 1 ton of food waste just from your school alone? Would you pay $2,000 for that? And they said, absolutely. And then the science teachers were like, we can't wait to teach the kids about composting. And the principal and the buildings and service guy, he was a little more hesitant. They were worried about rodents. And we explained that when you take the food out of the trash, which is what they're attracted to, and you put it in bins, and they're nicely tight locked bins, and it's removed every week, you actually have a chance to reduce the rodent problem. So that was super exciting. So this school's up and running. We're like, this is good, we can do this. And we started to ask around. My son got some friends to do it too. And then we found out some other kids in another part of Maryland were interested in composting. And this guy, Joe Richardson, who runs after school programs, he was connected to a lot of schools and he was really interested in composting. And then our delegates and a school board member, and we created a coalition to reimagine school waste. And this coalition we were like ready to do something. We went to our delegates and we said, okay, what do we need to do to pass legislation in the state of Maryland? And they said, well, we need data. And so we said, okay, well, how do we do that? And they said, well, we know about a grant. You can maybe apply for a grant through the World Wildlife Fund's Food Waste Warrior Program. And maybe if you get enough money, you can see if you can get some schools to do this and get some data. So sure enough, we wrote a proposal, kids worked all summer, and we won. We won about $50,000 to get 8 Title I schools to start composting and to create this program where like high school kids would teach their elementary school peers how to do it. And it was so exciting. So we started with, doing some waste sorts, and poured the trash from the cafeteria onto a mat, and we figured it out. We saw that 85% of the stuff that's in just a typical elementary school trash bag from the cafeteria is actually food and organic materials. And that stuff should certainly be composted. In fact, only 10% of the waste is really stuff that should go in the trash can. We also found out that kids are throwing a lot of good food away. So apples, oranges, whole bags of carrots. The sandwich that you guys made for lunch. Sorry. Yeah. In one school, there was 65 milks in just a day. That's 11,500 milks for just one school. Thrown away. whole little plastic bottles. And not, I won't even talk about the plastic bottles and how we could be doing milk dispensers, but we were thinking, if 1 in 8 Maryland students are hungry and we're throwing good food away, something is really wrong. So we added to our proposal share tables. They went away during the pandemic, but we're bringing them back. So we brought back share tables, and we decided to have little refrigerators, clear fronted refrigerators where kids could see what's inside, and when you put it at the front door of the cafeteria and it's there all day, you know what happens? That food is gone by the end of the day. Kids take it home to their families. It's awesome. And our plan was working. We had high schoolers giving assemblies to elementary schoolers. Kids were feeling empowered that they could save the environment. And we were finding a ton of food that was otherwise being thrown away that's now being shared. So we brought this good news back to our delegates and our legislators, and we said, okay, here's the data, what do we need to do now? And they said, okay, we'll write legislation for you, for the state of Maryland, but you need to help us with advocacy. So the students thought about an idea for a postcard writing campaign. And they were connected to the student councils of the state, so they can touch base with kids in every school in the state of Maryland. We got 12,000 children to write postcards to their local delegates. So kindergartners drew pictures, seniors and middle schoolers wrote really compelling reasons why we should be composting. It just makes perfect sense. And we brought a compost bin full of postcards up to Annapolis, and we brought it to the Secretary of the Environment and to a lot of delegates. We talked to them, and you know what? Legislation passed. We got $1.25 million for schools to start composting in Maryland, and it passed 44-0 in the Senate. When is the last time you heard of that? Bipartisan support, because it makes perfect sense. So fast forward, we got about 100 schools are composting or recovering food right now, which is not enough when there's 1,400 schools. Oh. So we want more. We want to do more. Some towns right here in DC, they are having compost pickup at everybody's homes. We love that. And whole towns like, actually Austin, Texas is doing it. Seattle, the entire town of Vermont, state of Vermont. Countries, all of Europe, a lot of Europe, they have whole countries that are composting, so we should do it too. So I want you to think, the next time you go home and you've got a little extra food, you don't want to throw it in the trash bin because you say, I don't want to cause methane. I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. I want to save the planet one apple core at a time. Thank you.